Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Pressbox Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Tim Kurkjian. Tim shares how the competitive nature of Cal Ripken Jr. led to the Hall of Fame shortstop breaking Lou Gehrig's record for consecutive games played. You mentioned Ripken, and I wanted to ask you specifically about Cal Ripken Jr. Now, here is a guy that you didn't have to check his locker. He was there every day, day after day after day, obviously famous for the streak. What was he like to cover as a beat guy, and then later at your time at Sports Illustrated, you would come in, so you had a working relationship with him, like a foundational relationship. What was it like to cover a famous guy like Ripken?
Well, I loved every second of it, first as a beat writer, because I recognized very quickly just how observant and analytical he was. There wasn't a play in a game that he could possibly miss. And then when I went to Sports Illustrated and I covered the whole Lou Gehrig chase, which was it was still the most powerful night I've ever spent in a ballpark. Cal Ripken just showed baseball, this is how you're supposed to conduct yourself. But if I may, Todd, this is very self-serving. I accidentally ended up in a basketball game with him. And I ended up playing a bunch of basketball with him in the offseason, which is a raging conflict of interest. I shouldn't have done it. You're not supposed to socialize with guys who you are covering on the beat, but it seemed okay because it was an athletic competition. But let me just show you how much I learned about him, the baseball player, by playing basketball with him. We're playing in the dingy, dinky little gym. There are only 10 of us, so it's 5-on-5. If you lose the game, you get to play the next game. In other words, there's no pressure. You don't have to sit if you lose. Everyone will do whatever it takes to not sit in a pickup game. So it's 14-14, the game straight to 15. And Ripken literally calls a timeout in the smallest pickup game ever. Calls his team over to the side to try to formulate a plan where they're going to score the final bucket and win. Well, they miss the shot. We get the rebound. We score. And he is furious that he lost a pickup game in the dingiest, dinkiest little gym in a really low-level pickup game. The other thing I learned from him is he occasionally loved to we were on opposite teams, he would occasionally love to pick me up at one end line and guard me face to face all the way down the court. And
full court pressure, huh?
Full court press in the smallest pickup game ever. He's a foot taller than me, weighs 100 pounds more than I do, and he enjoyed seeing if he could stay in front of the dinky little sports writer down the court. Finally,
could he?
I was a little too small for him. Now, once I got to the rim, he would swat it into the third row. But the point is, finally I just looked at him and I said, would you please just leave me alone? Would you please stop trying for 1 second? And he said, no. And that's who he was. That's who he still is. If there's a competition, we're going to play it correctly, and my team's going to win. Joe Ursulak, former player, covered him with the Orioles, told me not too long ago that in retirement, way into retirement, he played Ripken in ping pong. And I didn't know that Joe Ursulak was like a 3-state champion in high school. And he beat Ripken in ping pong 24 games in a row. And he said he would not leave my house until he won. And he said
24 games.
He won the 25th game at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then he went home. Todd, as you know, it's the common denominator of every great athlete we've ever met, whether it's Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Wayne Gretzky, they're all the same. We're going to play, and I'm going to win.
You mentioned the night he broke the streak, and some of the writers that we've interviewed, a couple of them have mentioned that night also. And they said it was a little weird because you knew it was going to happen, right? Like it wasn't something like a guy hits a home run, you don't know when it's going to happen. Like, you know he's going to walk out onto the field and it's going to break the record. And still, it had the impact that it had on you. Why?
Well, because it was a story that was way more than a baseball story. It was a story about commitment and loyalty and discipline and neighborhood. And that's what Cal Ripken represented well beyond baseball greatness. So my buddy Bob Elliott, who's from Toronto, one of my dear friends in the world, he comes down and shows up on the morning of 21-31. And he doesn't know Ripken particularly well, so he hasn't been a part of all the buildup that led to the morning of 21-31. He looks at me before the game starts, just like you said. He says, Tim, I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't feel it. I don't get it. What is the big deal? He's going to run out and break the record. I said, Bob, I don't know what's going to happen, but I promise you, once that banner comes down from the warehouse in right field, something's going to happen, and I don't even know what it is. So the banner comes down. Bobby Bonilla and Rafael Palmeiro push Ripken out on the field, and he makes this unforgettable 22-minute run around the stadium. There are people patting their hearts. There are people weeping in the crowd. Ripken is absolutely, he can't even understand what to do. It is such a powerful moment for all of us. He points at his wife and children. It was so good. It's the most powerful night I've ever spent in a major league ballpark. And when it was over, Bob Elliott, the same guy who said, I don't get it, came up to me and he said, with tears in his eyes, he said, okay, now I get it. That's what that night was all about, and it was unforgettable.
I just got chills when you retold it.